Hello everybody and welcome back to Mea Culpa Hobbies. My name's Dan and as you can probably tell it's Christmas here in my house at the moment. There's a Back to the Future advent calendar there with a couple of days open and a Christmas tree right behind me. But that's not what I'm here to talk to you about today. Today I want to review the Citadel Hobby Project Box and let you know why I love it, but I'm not sure you will. So hello everybody. Today I want to show you this. This is the Citadel Project Hobby Box, basically a storage case for your paints. And I want to review it and tell you why I love this, but I don't think you will. But before we get to that, let's just do a little guided tour of the box itself. So, it doesn't look too bad. It's got the Citadel current logo on the front. One detail I do like is these little bolts, these rivets or whatever they are plastic, but they have skulls on there in the pure GW style. The top's held in place by these two clips here that can be slightly fiddly, but once you get the hang of it, fine. And they hold the lid on, like so. The plastic itself doesn't feel particularly sturdy. It's if you've ever bought a fairly cheap toolbox, it's that same kind of fairly flexible material. Feels like it could shatter if you dropped it too regularly. And then within the box you have these removable paint trays. Now these are across pretty much all of the Citadel painting storage boxes. You can even buy them separately, and you get 3 of these in the case, which is pretty good. But you also get 1 of these, which is, in my opinion, fairly useless. The idea is that this is for your tools to be stored in, and I think even if you have invested in the clippers that Citadel or GW produce, or perhaps their blades, their other tools, they clip nicely into here. But if you haven't, like me, and you just buy more generic tools, this is pretty useless. Even if you are heavily invested in the Citadel GW range of tools, that's not a brilliant way to keep your paintbrushes, your glues, or anything like that. So in reality, this is almost useless. And what I've done is I've bought a set of these separately, which run at $12.99, I think, on the GW store, so that I can have my own case with 4 of these in, and I'll link up above me. The other one I've used in a portable hobby project box by magnetizing it. So you can see, if you have got 4 of these, you get enough for a decent amount of storage here. It's worth mentioning that these are only going to really work with the Citadel paints. Again, encouraging you to be fully invested within the Citadel brand. These are not going to securely hold any other paints, but the Citadel ones themselves, they're in there firmly. They're not going to come loose at any stage. Each one of these holds a good fair amount of paints, so you can fit a lot in here. It's worth mentioning though that with the clearance between, they do have to go a particular way in as well. With the clearance with the lid, you're not going to be able to fit your taller pots in these, like your shades, or if you want to put contrast paints in there, these are contrasts here. I've had to arrange them in a particular pattern because some of these paint trays are higher than others. I think you should probably be able to see there, this one is lower than this one. And if I put anything tall, like these are sort of a halfway house between a regular GW paint and one of their shades in height, it's not going to allow the box to close if they're in these higher ones. So again, if you're heavily invested in Citadel contrast, this probably isn't the product for you. But if I take these 4 paint trays out, then you'll see within here you have these sort of beveled rows here where you can store more paints. So this is where I keep my shades. It's where I keep spare paints that I have as doubles and other things that, such as these army painter washes that are too tall to fit in here and would rattle around. All those sorts of things find a home in here. Also, I've put in dropper bottles there's storage here that will accommodate dropper bottles. So I've got, what is that? Probably room for about 10 in there, plus however many you'd want to put in here. But it's worth mentioning, when you buy this, these slots in here actually have dividers in that I spent a lot of time with a Dremel, with a pair of scissors, with scalpels, with various tools, cutting the divides out so that these would fit in. And that's purely because I have some of these colours, like Vallejo white. I really like the Vallejo Model Air white, usually used for airbrushing. It's just so thin and so smooth. You get a wonderful coat from this, as opposed to I think I've got a GW Corax white here somewhere, which is so grainy. I would advise you never to use, really. There it is. It's just, you're never going to get a good coating with that unless you end up watering it down to a consistency much more like this anyway. So why do I love it despite those problems? I've had to do work on it, like I've said. I've had to cut these things out. I've had to buy extra parts. And this is just sitting in a cupboard now, completely useless. Perhaps you could find a way of wedging shade bottles in there or something. Actually, that one works quite well, but I think in other positions it's just not going to work quite as well. And it's certainly going to be not as space effective as getting an extra one of these. But the reason I love it is because I don't have a dedicated painting hobby space. Every time I want to paint, I have to bring out a portable painting system, which this works very well as. The prime reason for that is this is pretty much exactly the right size to fit inside a Billy bookcase, which just also happens to be where I keep all my paints and storage and minis that I haven't built yet. All the ongoing projects live within a Billy bookcase, and this fits in there perfectly and I've got Billy bookcase doors with enough room to actually have the doors close on this without jutting out. And prior to this system, I was using a toolbox, a simple toolbox, where all my paints were just sort of thrown in, and finding the right ones and finding the shade in a dark toolbox when, some of these, if you can't see the names, are going to look pretty similar. I've also invested in the Citadel paints. As you can see, I've got more Citadel paints than any other range. I agree that they're probably not the best bottles before anyone comments about Vallejo or dropper bottles being much nicer. They're probably not the best bottles, but what I like about these is they are so ubiquitous that you can find these anywhere. If I run out of, choose a random paint, this Araman blue, there'll be a shop within a short drive that has this exact paint that I need. I can't say the same for other brands of paint, be they Army Painter, Vallejo, any of the others I've got in here. They're just not quite as easy to get. And I like being able to know that I can find the exact colour matches for these whenever I need them. The reason that I don't think this is going to work for you necessarily though is that I'm aware not everyone is as invested within these paints as I am. There's also a good chance that if you are heavily invested in GW paints, you probably have a lot of contrast paints, which can't be used by a lot of these top slots. Maybe even half of these will not accommodate your GW paints or your GW contrast paints. Granted, you could put them in the bottom, but that's still half the box wasted. The other reason I think this box probably isn't for most people is the cost. It's £55 currently on the GW store, which is a lot of money for a not particularly robust plastic tub. The other reason that I'm not quite sure this is going to work for everybody is that if you've invested this much time and kind of love into the hobby of painting your models, I can imagine you probably also have a little corner of your home, be it your bedroom, maybe even a shed, where you can have a permanent painting station, where these can stay out and remain organised for long periods of time. I don't have that luxury. I'm in quite a small home with a child and my wife, so I can't leave this stuff out for long periods of time. And I also happen, which is, I'd imagine, maybe not that rare, but I happen to keep all my stuff within a Billy bookcase where this fits perfectly. So for this to work as well for you as it does for me, you probably need to be heavily invested into the Citadel paint range. You need to be painting with the base layers, or the base paints and the layer paints rather than contrast. You need to not have too many dropper bottles, and you need to have a bully bookcase. And you also need to have enough disposable income that £50 for a paint case doesn't seem like too much, particularly if you're going to be buying an extra set of these, another £12.50, £12.99, whatever they are, added on top. That seems too much for me, I have to say. I only bought this because I had a voucher, and at that very moment I was desperately searching for a painting solution, and there wasn't any models that I was desperately in need of. I think you could probably buy one of these and be happy with it if you have those exact requirements, but otherwise, or despite the fact that I really love this and I really enjoy it and it works brilliantly for me, I'm hard pressed to say that it'll work quite as well for you. So thanks for watching, and if you've got any comments or you want to ask me any questions about exactly how many paints or the exact dimensions of this, drop them in the comments and I'll strive to answer any of them. And if you find this tool useful or interesting, please drop a like or even subscribe. It really helps me and it really helps the channel. So once again, thanks for joining us, and hopefully see you next time on Citadel Hobbies.